get a guy named Mike. He can just write down what we say.
His mouth.
Yeah, and then he can deliver our podcast in the mail like
and
Netflix.
We could just spit in his mouth.
What?
And then, don't you want to spit in someone's mouth?
Yeah, like, no, I'm not going to get political here.
I just meant because of COVID and we can't even do anything. And what a thrilling experience it would be.
Oh yeah, it would be like
to
base
spit
jumping
in someone's mouth or be the receiver.
Did you know that base jumping is an acronym? Or the base part is anyway.
I don't think I knew that about base jumping.
I don't remember what it is.
But here's my prediction.
Okay. Go ahead and
people spitting in each other's mouths is going to be a huge uptick of that in porn. Huge.
Oh, give me a break.
Huge. What?
I don't think so.
Do you not know?
I know there's like coronavirus-related porn that's happening. But
it's not necessarily just the coronavirus-related porn. It's, okay, did you know that there has been a resurgence in the glory hole community? Because of COVID, to the point where like New York City public health officials have said like, go fucking glory holes.
They've actually recommended it? Wow.
Yes. Having sex through through a barrier is like one of the only COVID safe ways to have sex.
Right.
With like not
with
a
somebody that's not
partner.
like your steady partner.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder if that's like something that happened in the 1918 pandemic as well.
I'm trying to think about because I did a whole bunch of research on this. I'm trying to think.
This is your next topic?
No, I did this topic.
Glory holes, cult are just weird.
I did this topic on my other podcast.
Oh, okay.
This is a confession. You know how I know everything?
I don't want to know about your glory hole.
No. You know how I just, like, I know everything about everything? I'm really smart.
But do I have to accept that for you to continue talking?
You know how you can know a lot of things and be a semi-intelligent person, and then, like, you realize that an idea you had is just so stupid and irrational?
Yeah, that happens sometimes. Yeah.
I did not put two and two together that glory holes were a big thing in the gay male community. That's where they are big.
Wait, you really?
Yes. Yep.
Dude.
Didn't put it together.
As like a straight male, I was well aware of that.
Yeah, I know, and you're talking to like a not straight person.
Yeah, I know.
I just never thought about it. And then I did research on this topic, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" People have private glory holes that, like,
I didn't know that.
Like, there are privately owned. I think that this is more typical now than like, back. So unfortunately, the height of glory hold'em got ruined by another pandemic. It was ruined by the AIDS pandemic.
Oh, right.
Epidemic. Was it a pandemic or an epidemic?
I don't know. I think it was a pandemic because it was worldwide. And extended period of time.
Well, that was another horrible thing that our government handled terribly and killed a lot of people. History repeats itself, and it ruined glory holes, but they're making a resurgence now in this pandemic. But in between
so it depends on the pandemic.
Depends on the pandemic. In between that time, there was a rise in like privately owned glory holes. Like glory
I didn't know that was a
holes
thing.
In people's homes that you let... Like, you have sex parties and, like, people come have sex in your glory hole.
I mean, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I just never... Glory holes seem like such a fundamentally, like, public thing to me.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
They've been around since, like, the 1700s at the latest. Like, they've been around for a long time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised if it was longer.
Yeah.
So anyway, for everyone that's back with us now that we're done talking about
bonus
porn.
Content.
No, man, we're leaving that in. Here, and... Cold open.
I was just trying to say that I do think that things like spitting in people's mouths is going to be, it's going to be sexualized.
Probably, but like everything is, I don't know. I just, that
like, that's
doesn't
already
feel like,
sexualized, but that's...
If your argument is just like some sort of dominance-oriented, inappropriate, I'm going to infect you with COVID, then I agree with you. Specifically spitting in somebody's mouth, I don't know.
You know that that's a thing already, right?
No.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
That's already a thing.
Oh, okay. All right. You're probably right. You know way more than porn about it.
I know more than porn. I don't know much more than porn.
You know
that's basically
way more about porn than I do.
That's basically my only area of expertise. No, spitting into your partner's mouth is already a not super uncommon sex act.
I didn't know that.
Because it has that like dominance aspect and that like hardcore intimacy aspect, and it's like gross, but if you're doing it in a sexual context, that makes it hot. It's a thing already.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Are we done with the porn talk? Or
I could keep going forever.
Should we just do another podcast where we talk about porn, or you talk about porn and I go, oh, I didn't know that.
Do you have any idea how much I would be into that? That's
all right. Well, when we expand our podcast empire and we do our own little version of like Radiotopia, then our next podcast will be about the history,
sex ed
and
with
vagaries
Kayla.
of bliss. Yeah. All right. That sounds good. Okay, cool. So now that we've driven away part of our listener, was there anything else you wanted to talk about? I feel like there was something you said we needed to say on the show.
2 things. First, if you listened to our previous episode about the voluntary human extinction movement and you wanted more on the topic, be sure to head over to our Patreon, where we had an in-depth discussion with our composer.
The way we said we would.
The way we said we would. We actually did it. It is published on Patreon as bonus content. We had an in-depth conversation about a different way to be under the antinatalist umbrella with our composer. Go over there and check it out.
Yeah, the episode was more about the movement and ecology, whereas this discussion was more about like the individual ethics and morality like of natalism versus antinatalism.
Existential ethics.
It was super dorky try hard because that's who we are as people.
The second thing I wanted to talk about was to tell all of our listeners that we just watched a really great documentary last night called Feels Good Man.
Yes. Actually, I bring that up in the episode.
Oh, so should you want me to say it?
No, go ahead.
That was the only other business I had.
Yeah, it was. Oh, there was a third business. I just remembered what it was. So Feels Good Man was a documentary about the
Pepe meme.
Pepe the which
frog.
I don't really want to get into it because that's like there's a whole documentary about it. So I don't want to spend an hour and a half talking about it.
And it's so good.
But it's a cartoon that some guy drew and got co-opted by the alt-right Nazis on the internet, and then it's a story of that happening and then him fighting back against that. And then the third thing was...
And it does coincide with like cult-like behaviors in groups. So it's not totally out of the realm of us to talk about it, but it was also just really good.
Well, I mean, we talk about a lot of stuff that we shouldn't be, like Jurassic Park and Star Trek and all that shit. Porn. Yeah. Glory holes. So yeah, it was really interesting. And then the third thing was 2 episodes. So last episode was the voluntary human extinction movement. 2 episodes ago, we talked about the Gaia streaming service.
Oh.
And I forgot to put this into the episode, but one of the, and I actually haven't seen this ad for a long time now, but one of the ads that was getting thrown at me was like this special interview session thing with David Icke. Who is like the?
Do we have time?
He's like the OG. He's like the OG conspiracy theorist. Like he was around during the like GeoCities internet, and he's basically like a less angry version of Alex Jones. He's got all the conspiracies.
To fame, like I think the thing that he is probably the best known for is the reptilian.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theory that there are reptilians that have emerged from the center of the earth, reptilian humanoids.
They live in the hollow earth.
They live in the hollow earth. They come out onto the people land and they disguise themselves as people and they secretly rule.
Control us, blah, blah, blah. QAnon. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up as well. So all of that out of the way, are you ready to talk about the actual episode, finally?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Oh, this is Culture Just Weird.
Oh, do we have to say that still? Yeah.
I'm Kayla.
I'm Chris.
Go.
Okay. I got to tell you right up front here, Kayla. Today's topic.
I don't like the look on your face.
OMG. Today's topic is easily the most controversial one we've done on the show.
Okay. This season or ever?
Ever on the show and probably ever will do.
It's more controversial than
it's in a different league.
Creativity movement?
Well, that's not controversial. That's just bad.
So you mean like both sidesy? Like most both sidesy?
There's just a lot of controversy surrounding this topic, okay? I would say this is even more of a minefield than the stuff we have coming down the pipe the next few episodes.
What?
Oh, yeah.
I'm tired.
We're going to lose probably half our listeners or more.
Okay.
We might get some hate mail and death threats. Okay. Like the whole 9 yards.
I'm looking forward to those. Mm-hmm. I'm a woman on the internet. I've been there.
And I apologize in advance. I'm very sorry. But hey, YOLO, right?
You only live once, which can go both ways. You ought to look out.
Yeah. And P.S., if that's not enough to wet your whistle, then how about this? I have a proposal for a new criterion maybe to be added to the official COJW Is It a Cult criteria list. I know. WTF, right? Okay. But before I reveal today's topic...
No, just tell us what it is.
It's time for the ritual listing of the sources. My sources for this episode's research included Exempli Gracia. E.g., sorry. E.g., for example, several independent blogs and websites, such as one called olsenhome.com. Also read a blog, like a personal page blog for a researcher at the Université de Montréal. Okay. And another website whose URL, or I guess the URL if you prefer.
What? Wait, what? Did you just say Earl?
Yeah, some people say Earl.
Did you just say Earl?
Yeah. Okay, fine. URL.
Oh my God.
I can't say right now because it would spoil the topic that I'm about to say in 2 minutes anyway. Newsweek, The Atlantic, Gizmodo, Stack Exchange, Reddit, Wikipedia, obviously, NY Daily News, Kin, or CNN as some people pronounce it.
I'm sorry. No, I know what you're talking about. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Please,
Pakistan Today, Smithsonian Magazine, mentalfloss.com, medium.com, and last but not least, both Webster's and Oxford English dictionaries. All right, so you ready for me to teach the controversy? Because it is FUBAR.
I'm not doing that.
So here's my obligatory question to you, Kayla, to start the show.
No, I'm not doing this. Don't worry. Leaving. Please let me get up.
This is an easy one. Oh my God. I just want, all you have to do is take a look at my screen here and tell me the correct way to pronounce this. How do you pronounce that?
Geif. So, okay. When I am with you, when I am with people I am comfortable with, when I am safely at home, and I know I will not be ridiculed or yelled at, I will say GIF. If I am amongst strangers, if I am amongst haters and judges, if I am amongst people that I know are going to give me a hard fucking time, that is GIF. And I have had to train myself to do this.
GIF.
Because of the society that we live in.
Yeah, so I'll say a little bit about that in a second. You will also say it on the podcast because part of I've been wanting to do this for a little while, but the thing that triggered me to remember, like, oh, I'm going to do it next episode was you said the word as GIF last episode in the, by the way, acronym Vehement episode.
Oh, did we yell at each other about that? Did I yell at you?
No, you kind of just said it as like in conversation. You said, anyway, take a look at this GIF of blah, blah, blah. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, is she saying GIF on the podcast?
I don't remember that.
The public, we're going to lose our listeners right now.
Well, that just means I feel so comfortable with our listeners.
Oh, that's true. And I guess like everyone that hasn't already hung up the phone at this point, you're probably all people that pronounce GIF after listening to our rant right there, right?
Here's the thing. Can I just say one thing? Can I say one thing before we do this?
You can, but I mean, it's probably stuff that we're going to talk about.
I just want to make it clear up front that I do not care what version of the word a person uses.
We will get to that.
I do not care.
We will
get to that. It is important for me to say that right up top.
Absolutely. That's a big part of the discussion today. So anyway, now you see what I mean by controversial, right? Because today, listeners, friends, soon to be enemies, on Kajwa or maybe Koju or maybe just COJW, we are talking about the eternal holy war between GIFers and GIFers. Those who pronounce the file format spelled GIF as GIF in a mighty struggle against those who pronounce it as GIF. Before we get into it, though, I want to baseline explain what the hell we're talking about for those listeners that haven't been to the internet. Here's how Wikipedia sums it up.
I'm so upset right now.
The graphics interchange format is a bitmap image format, so it's just an image format, that was developed by a team at the online services provider CompuServe, led by the American computer scientist Steve Wilhite on June 15, 1987. It has since come into widespread usage on the World Wide Web, due to its wide support and portability between applications and operating systems.
Cool.
So that's a good primer on the very basic question of what is it? It's a file format used for sharing images, developed by CompuServe all the way back in 87. It has a bit of an interesting history, which I'll only spend like a few sentences on here, and like actual cursory, not like Kayla cursory where you spend half the podcast on. Since the software development history isn't what's in question here, but basically the GIF, and yes, I'll be pronouncing it GIF for mostly the rest of the show, except for when I'm specifically referencing GIF. So if you're a hardcore GIFer, then like, sorry, not sorry, but it's been nice having you as a listener. Anyway, the GIF has this particular way of encoding and storing information that allows images to basically be like really tiny in terms of like their size and very portable, as Wikipedia mentioned. And of course, this is the key. It allows it to animate.
It's a little picture that moves and then it loops around.
Right. It's like a tiny looping animation. According to Smithsonian Magazine, quote, in the late 90s, GIF images were largely phased out, especially since other file formats now did a better job when it came to static pictures. But nobody else could fill that one niche that GIF had cornered, animated images. And so, even as the internet evolved beyond early HTML, the scrappy old GIF clung on for dear life. Like most digital media, it fills a need, but it also kind of created the need, says Kevin Zhang, a PhD researcher at the MIT Media Lab. We all know how unwieldy texting can be and how much context can be lost, especially emotional context. Once you make it visual, you have a higher bandwidth to convey nuance. End quote. So that's where the GIF comes in, right? That's essentially where we are today with it. GIFs are pretty ubiquitous. They're simple looping and sometimes still images. Images used to communicate some really nuanced statements, coupled with emotions and other subtle information across Twitter, Facebook, SMS texts, Slack chat, the list goes on. Basically any platform for communication that you can name. And again, ubiquitous because of that context, right? Like they get across meaning that words just alone don't get. And since GIFs have become such a ubiquitous part of everyone's everyday lives, that means we are constantly being put in the position of having to use the word in conversation. And back before 2020, oftentimes that conversation was in person and verbal. I know you probably don't remember in person and verbal.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I know. So you need to know how to pronounce it correctly, right?
I mean, is there a correctly? Why does there have to be a correctly?
Well, here's the thing about the English language. Sometimes there's like just a tiny little bit of ambiguity.
There's a whole fucking song about it. You say tomato, I say tomato, go fuck yourself.
That's right.
I hate
that's how
you.
It goes.
Like,
yeah,
that's how it goes.
And I'm not picking on English either. It's sort of a feature of spoken human languages. But, you know, the whole, like, actually, you say, so that's your example. You say tomato example. I say I before E example. You know, I before E except after C.
Or sounds like an A is in neighbor and way.
I have neighbor and slay. Or what about weird? Because that's E before I. It doesn't follow a C or sound like an A.
No.
What about forfeit?
English is stupid.
Actually, Merriam-Webster even makes this statement about it. The I before E except after C rule is highly inconsistent in the English language and should not be considered a solid rule. One question we get asked a lot is why so many English words don't follow the I before E rule. Well, the English language can be inconsistent. This is what makes English such a vibrant and expressive language, but it can also make it a nightmare to learn, end quote.
I've heard, so I appreciate them calling English a vibrant and expressive language, because I've also heard that, like, basically kind of some of that exact reasoning to describe it as, like, dead and soulless. The fact that it, like, because part of the reason why it is so inconsistent is because English takes from so many other languages.
Right.
So that, like, the argument is that it's like, it's just totally a colonial language, so it's, like, dead and doesn't have any of its own soul. I think, I see both sides. I think it's interesting that both seem true. Right.
There's a lot of words that come from, like, a vast variety of different histories, right? There's, like, Latin words, there's Germanic words, there's a lot of different...
French.
Well, French is Latinized.
I'm just saying we take a lot of words from French.
Right. Yes, I guess, yeah. So that's the thing. It's not only is it Latin words, it's like Latin words via France, Spain, Romania. There's Greek words. There's languages. Right. Goddamn romance, chick flicks. Anyway, so they say it can be a nightmare to learn. I would add to this sometimes a nightmare to expand as well, such as when a new word or acronym gets added to it in the internet age, such as GIF. So how to know how to pronounce it correctly? We'll get to that.
There is no correctly.
Before we do, I want to briefly mention why we're talking about pronunciations and acronyms on a show ostensibly about cults, or at least weirds. And I think that you kind of already hit on this a little bit, but here's the thing about the GIF/GIF pronunciation debate. people get fucking passionate about this.
Yeah, and it's honestly, it gets really confrontational and aggressive, and I don't get it. I'm just like, leave me alone.
They get dogmatic, which we will see further in the episode. And I also have had personal experience with this. So, like, I've definitely had that thing where, like, I'll just sort of casually say it in conversation as if I was just making... Yeah, and then somebody will say, wait, what? What did you just say?
Like,
did you just say GIF like an idiot?
Exactly what I did to you with Earl.
Yeah.
Except I was confused. I wasn't, like, saying you're an idiot. But I've gotten that from people who pronounce the word differently from me. And like, you legit get yelled at and like made to feel stupid and dumb. And it's like, I'm just here.
Yeah. And that's happened to me like multiple times.
Yeah.
So
I just want to live my life. Can I live?
I'm sure, caveat, because on this show, we want to make sure that we're looking at all sides. I'm sure there are just as dogmatic GIFers out there as there are the GIFers that you and I have experienced.
Well, I've had this exact conversation with people. Like, I am friends with some GIFers, and I will say, GIFers can be really dogmatic and yell at me, and then they will say the exact same thing about GIFers.
Right. So I'm sure that it happens on both sides.
You know what it is?
And I'm sure that none of our listeners are as dogmatic as the people that I just mentioned. I'm sure all you guys are cool about it like we are. What is it?
You remember the star-bellied sneeches?
What?
Do you remember the star-bellied sneeches?
What are you talking about?
The Dr. Seuss book about the star-bellied sneeches.
I don't think I read that one.
Some of the sneeches had star bellies and some of the sneeches didn't. And there was this whole thing about like what was better. And ultimately it was like they're just different. That's what, and they like would fight and stuff.
And what's bad is the fighting, not whether you have a star or not.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Kayla. And maybe that's the case we're going to end up presenting here. But as to why we're talking about this on the show, it's those experiences largely that inspired me to think of this as a topic for Cult or Just Weird. Because
yeah, that makes sense.
When you get into that level of dogma, you're just kind of like, dude, what the hell? I'm going to talk about this on my podcast.
Like, dude, what the hell? Why do you care so much? That's what I wanted to know. It's like, why do you care?
But yeah, for you GIFers out there, I realize that you are probably dealing with the exact same thing. We each encounter people in our lives that have a certain amount of dogma for a particular side that they're on.
Those GIFers do not represent me.
They don't represent me either. But I'm sure the GIFers would say the people that we've encountered don't represent them.
That's true.
Right? Anyway, as you and I tend to do, once something becomes a topic for the show, I wanted to dig deep and see if I could find any definitive answers to the question. And by the question, today I both mean, are GIFers and or GIFers a cult? And also, damn it, which side is correct?
I don't care about that part.
Come on, Kayla, you know you care a little bit.
No.
The devil on your shoulder
there
wants to know.
No, correct.
So I learned a lot about acronyms in my research for this episode, and I want to start with that before getting into the specific arguments offered forth by the GIFer cult and the GIFer cult. First of all, do you think you need like a definition of what an acronym is?
Do I?
Yeah.
Maybe. I think it's just when you make a word out of some letters from a bunch of words.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. But oh, my friend, if you thought you knew what an acronym was and it was simple, you are quite mistaken.
Nothing is simple. Everything's the coastline.
But let's start with the literal definition, though. What is an acronym? Here's what OED says. That's Oxford English Dictionary. The first definition is a group of initial letters used as an abbreviation for a name or expression, each letter or part being pronounced separately, an initialism. Second definition.
So that means like ATM?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly, yeah. Second definition, a word formed from the initial letters of other words or occasionally from the initial parts or syllables taken from those words, the whole being pronounced as a single word itself.
So like scuba.
So like scuba or NATO. So I don't know if you caught that synonym in the first definition at the end of it, and they said initialism, but let's talk about acronyms versus initialisms. What constitutes an acronym versus initialism is its own little bucket of controversy worms to untangle, so we won't go there, but I think the best way I can summarize is this. An initialism is a type of an acronym where you pronounce the letters individually, as you said, like ATM or USA.
Okay.
Right, as opposed to a non-initialism acronym like NASA or SCUBA. According to the heavily referenced Wikipedia, or actually, it wouldn't be heavily referenced. The Wikipedia article had a bunch of references that it referenced on the subject. There is criticism of the use of the word acronym when referring to what is technically an initialism, but the original meaning of the word acronym did include initialisms. So it's technically correct to say like ATM is an acronym, even though it's like a specific type of acronym initialism.
See, I think
but some people might yell at you.
In my head, I would pretty much only think of acronyms being things that like spell a word.
Yeah.
Like I know that like ATM, but like if you're going to say think of some acronyms, I'm thinking of...
You wouldn't think of it, yeah.
Scuba, GIF.
Well, now you would say...
Base.
Right. Now you would say initialism, if you wanted to say, like, if you wanted to be, like, really clear.
Right.
You'd say initialism when you're talking about USA, ATM,
okay,
whatever.
Because, we don't say USA. We don't say atom.
Right. Anyway, we are just getting started. Want to hear a different way to break down acronyms into various types and classifications?
Yes.
Well, I thought you were going to say no.
Oh.
So my script says, too bad.
Oh, well, yes. Sorry.
All right, let's go through the types.
Oh, God, there's too many. I don't want to know this many.
Oh, there's a lot. So the first type is the one we already talked about, pronounced as a word containing only initial letters. So that's like scuba, laser, GIF. Then there's a type that, well, actually, let me skip down a little bit here in the way they organize it, because the second type would be pronounced only as a string of letters. So VHF, USA, BBC, right? And that's an initialism. Then there's a type that is pronounced as a word containing a mixture of initial and non-initial letters. So that's something like Gestapo, which I can't really pronounce the German words there.
Oh, I can. What is it?
Geheim Stasi Police.
That sounds good.
So it's like the GE from Geheim and STAPO from Staatspolice.
Right.
I know we have like people listening to us from Germany, and I'm really sorry about that.
Just say Cointelpro.
Yeah, exactly. Or radar, which is radio detection and ranging. Then there's the kind that is pronounced as a combination of spelling out and a word. So like CD-ROM. Right? So you say the letters CD, but then you say a ROM as a word.
It's not good ROM.
Then there's pronounced as a string of letters, but with a shortcut. So like AAA.
Oh, shit.
Nobody except for my grandmother says AAA.
Grammy says AAA?
She says AAA.
So
it's really cute, yeah. Or like NAACP, right? Which is weird because like NAACP is actually fewer syllables.
But it's harder to say.
I know, it's
NAACP,
weird, right?
NAACP.
It just sounds more, it just flows better as AA. I don't know why. So then there's one where they actually incorporate, there's a type where they actually incorporate the shortcut into the name. So the company 3M was originally actually 3Ms, and then they just shortened it to the number 3 and the letter M.
What's 3M?
Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company. And yes, that's the company that makes your Post-it notes.
What?
Yeah, 3M.
I've never looked at the Post-it note package, apparently.
Okay, well, that's them. Or like if you've heard of E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo,
yes.
It's abbreviated as E. It's not EEE. It's E and then the number 3. Then we start getting into the really cool ones. These are some of my favorites. So the multi-layered acronyms, my favorite of which, actually none of these are really things I think people would know except for my favorite, which is AIM. AIM stands for AOL Instant Messenger.
Oh, shit.
Where AOL stands for America Online.
Oh, my God. That's so good.
Yeah. Then there's recursive acronyms.
Ooh, what's that?
So the only one I could find here that maybe people would know is there's a software thing called GNU, like GNU.
Yeah.
And it stands for GNU's Not Unix.
We talked about that maybe a little tiny bit in the cicada episode.
Oh, did we?
Maybe.
Oh, about.
I think we had a conversation about.
Is it pronounced GNU or new?
We had this conversation.
Oh, did we? Holy shit!
It was like, is it GNU or new? We had that conversation in cicada.
Well, my favorite example here is for anybody that happens to listen to the show that also watches Steven Universe. There's a toy in the Steven Universe called Guys, and it stands for Guys Under Your Supervision. And I just giggle every single time I think about that. Yeah, it's great. So that's one of my favorites.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Where does vehement fall in this? Did you?
I thought about that. I think vehement is to
more
me
like
is
Gestapo.
No, because because
they take the
they take the M and the T from movement, and also the T's at the end. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's more like Gestapo or radar. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what we'll classify it as.
And we are the final word. Then there's pseudo-acronyms, which aren't really acronyms. They're actually what's called grammograms.
Grammograms?
Which is an adorable name. But a grammogram is...
Call my grandma that.
Grammograms.
Oh, that's so cute.
So that's something like IOU, right? So IOU is the letters IOU, but it represents the sound of each letter actually represents the whole word.
Yeah.
Right. Or canine. The letter K, the number 9 for a canine unit is the word canine.
Right.
Right. And there's a lot of grammograms that go around, for example, in...
Cute.
like internet speak involves grammograms frequently. So like the letters see you, like see you later, right? And those are technically not acronyms. Anyway, that's probably like way too much information, since I guess I could have just said like, well, GIF is one of those types like NASA where you pronounce it as a word. But I don't know. I thought all of those different types of acronyms, to me anyway, are fascinating. There's a few I left out too, but let's move on to the history of acronyms.
Okay. Why is there a history?
There's a history of everything, and I like history, so we're going to talk about the history, goddammit.
I'm just saying, why is there a history?
Why? I don't know, because humans existed in the past.
But like, why is there a history? It's just words. Words.
Kayla, we just a minute ago were talking about like words that come from Latin and whatnot.
Boring.
You're boring. How long, Kayla, do you think acronyms have been around?
Since as long as recorded language.
I don't think that there's solid evidence for that, but I think it's probably true. But what we do know is that, at least in English, from what I could gather, they haven't been around too long. It's only really been in like the last 100 years or so that we've even had a word for acronym.
Really?
So prior to that, there were acronyms, but they really gained in popularity in the 20th century thanks to things like corporate America, the rise of specialized fields with their own jargon, and especially the military.
And because we just got to go faster.
Right.
Got to go fast.
And that's why a lot of older supposed acronyms actually aren't. And that's not to say there weren't acronyms before this. It's just they really saw a rise in usage in the 20th century. So, for example, SOS doesn't actually mean save our ship.
Well, that meant save our souls.
So there's two things that people usually attribute it to, is save our ship or save our souls. It didn't actually originally mean that. So the original SOS signal was chosen specifically because of how easy it was to distinguish 3 dots followed by 3 dashes followed by 3 dots in Morse code.
Beep, 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 beep.
Right.
That's what it sounds like.
Right, and that's exactly. And that was,
are you proud that
of all of the combinations of letters they could come up with to be like the most distinctive, that was it. So they chose that for like the emergency code.
Do you want to know how I know the SOS code?
I don't know. Doesn't everybody?
It's a little recursive. There's a specific reason why I know it.
Okay.
Because it is a plot point in the classic David Fincher film, Panic Room, in which the main characters, don't remember their names, but it is Jodie Foster and Kristen Stewart.
Kristen Stewart's in that?
Kristen Stewart's the daughter.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And she is like, let's shine this little flashlight out the hole and we'll see if somebody will find us.
Was it a glory hole?
It was a glory hole in the Panic Room. And the reason she knew what the SOS code was from a little...
Because she was a sailor.
It's from a little film, just a little indie feature by Mr. James Cameron titled Titanic.
Ah, yeah.
I saw Panic Room before I saw Titanic.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're avant-garde film watcher over here.
So I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, David Fincher's so avant-garde.
So claiming that Save Our Ship / Save Our Souls is a expansion of SOS is an example of what's called false or folk etymology. And it's a special case. The folk etymology thing is a special case of what's called a backronym.
Backronym! It's almost as good as grammogram, but not.
I love backronym. See, I told you there were more types, right? So a backronym is when the word comes first and then an acronym is made up for it. So oftentimes this is intentional or like humorous or something, but sometimes it comes up in the form of folk etymology like SOS.
Right.
Another example would be like Adidas. The athletic wear brand name Adidas is named after the company founder Adolf Adi Dassler, but it's falsely believed by some to be an acronym for All Day I Dream About Sport.
What? Ew, who thinks that? That's a
know.
dumb thing to think. Sorry.
Adidas fans.
Ew. All day I dream about sport?
Yeah, I know. That's pretty
okay?
lame.
Like,
yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Any Adidas fans out there that think that, I apologize.
Sorry.
Unless you're also a
judgy.
Giffer. Today, this is a judgy topic, Kayla. It's impossible to get around.
All day I dream about sport.
Then, of course, who could forget that one kid in middle school who told me that fuck expanded to for use of carnal knowledge?
Bitch, no, it is fornicate under consent of the king.
Yeah, that's the bigger one. Yeah, and actually there's a whole cottage industry around the different folk etymology backronyms for fuck, as you might imagine.
Yeah. I was really disillusioned when I learned that was all fake.
I know. But outside of English, acronyms actually go back pretty damn far in history. For example, the Latin words Romans used to refer to their own empire were acronymed to SPQR.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
You have a book with that on it.
It's still used on, I have a book that's called SPQR, and you can still see SPQR on manhole covers in Rome today. And it stands for Senatus Populusque Romanus. And I
sounded very confident.
Almost certainly mispronounced that. But anyway, that's exactly how we would say USA today as an acronym for United States of America. The other thing that, I actually didn't have this in my script, but I want to mention it. You will also see things get acronymized. Turned into acronyms in the ancient times, unlike coins. So what you find is actually things end up getting acronyms made for them when they appear a lot on methods of communication that have little space. Mm-hmm. So things like Twitter, texting, whatever, drive the creation of acronyms. Coins drive the creation of acronyms.
Do you talk at all about
pamphlets, newspapers?
The hyper specific usage of acronyms in certain subreddits?
No.
Because that's an interesting thing, and this happens in a lot of different forums.
I don't really talk about the jargon bit, but there's a whole bit.
I just want to say this. Then this happens a lot in specific forums, specifically mommy forums. But if you go on Reddit forums "Am I the asshole?" or "Just no mother-in-law" or "Just no significant other," the things that get acronymized on there. It's so hyper specific that it's almost difficult to read some of the posts.
Yeah, it's very jargony.
Because it's just last week DH and I took SO to the LO and MIL went to the, and you're just oh my God, what is this saying?
What are you talking about? Yeah. So staying in antiquity, what does it mean when you see a little fish on the back of someone's car?
INRI. What? Doesn't it?
Close. No.
It doesn't?
No, it doesn't.
Wait, I'm sorry. What?
Hold on the INRI bit.
What?
You're close, because you can thank Greek-speaking early Christians for that. And a lot of early Christians in Rome were Greek-speaking. The first letters in the Greek words meaning Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior, acronym out to spell fish in Greek.
I thought that's what INRI was.
No.
I'm sorry.
Speaking of Jesus, Catholics and other Christian crucifix enthusiasts might recognize the letters INRI. INRI, displayed above the crucified Jesus, which is an acronym that roughly translates in Latin to Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews.
I thought that INRI and the fish were the same thing.
They are not.
This is just when I found out about glory holes.
That being said, Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior, and Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews, I mean, it still has his name there.
How many freaking titles does there need to be?
Well, so Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior is more of something that Christians would use, because it's yay, Jesus is awesome.
Gotcha.
Whereas INRI was essentially a slur that the Romans were putting on his.
Oh.
Yeah. It was like a sarcasm almost. It was look at this guy that said he was king of the Jews and now he's dead. That's what INRI is.
I think that they shouldn't have been so mean to Jesus.
They were pretty mean to him.
He was cool.
Yeah, he probably toked and everything.
Well, he definitely did. But also I'm just he was a nice guy. Leave him alone.
Yeah. And speaking of Jews, there is a popular, although to my knowledge historically unsubstantiated, claim that the Yiddish letters on the dreidel are an acronym standing for a great miracle happened there. Any Judaic scholars listening, please correct me if I'm wrong here on that being conjecture versus fact, but I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting.
Again, the history of acronyms may not help us too much to settle the GIF versus GIF argument, but hey, you never know. We like to be thorough here on COJW.
Well, and if all else fails, the next time you're getting yelled at by the opposite speaking person, just start throwing history of
just be like, do you know what the letters on the dreidel mean?
Until they leave you alone.
Yeah, exactly. Before we move on to that, to the various weapons each side of this pronunciation war deploy against each other, I want to mention 2 more things that I found in my research that I really loved. First is the concept of the anacronym, which basically means an acronym that people have started to forget is actually an acronym.
Oh, yeah.
So examples of this are things like SCUBA, which is an acronym for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, or LASER, light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, or even radar, radio detection and ranging, right? Like those get used as words so much now that we sort of have just kind of forgotten that they were ever acronyms.
It's similar to the usage of the replacing of a word with a brand name.
Yeah.
It's like Kleenex.
Yeah, exactly. And so those are called anacronyms. And by the way, don't confuse anacronym spelled with a C and anacronym spelled with a CH, because those are completely different.
That's too much for me.
An anacronym with a CH, so it's like ANACHRONYM, has nothing to do with acronyms. Rather, it refers to words that are used in an anachronistic way, such as calling aluminum foil tin foil, which used to contain tin but now doesn't, or saying dialing a telephone number, although rotary phones are now functionally extinct, or golf clubs being called woods and irons, even though clubs are now made from crazy carbon composites or whatever instead of wood and iron.
Dialing a phone number?
No, dialing is a dial refers to a rotary thing.
I just thought it was you were dialing just by poking around.
I know. That's how much of an acronym it is.
My grandma used to have one of these phones. I used to know how to use it, and I didn't know.
Remember how TVs used to say, don't touch that dial? It's because they were a rotary thing. A dial is a round thing.
Well, this is dialing the phone.
Exactly.
Poking the numbers.
Exactly. And there's other examples chalk isn't actually made of chalk anymore, and pencil lead isn't made of lead, so on and so forth.
But those aren't acronyms.
Those are anacronyms with a CH.
Okay. Someone should change that.
Anyway, if you're still with me, that's good, because my last but not least is my favorite acronym thing that I learned while doing this research.
And it's not Guys Under Your Supervision?
Which is called... No, it's maybe tied with that. It's called RAS syndrome. The RAS in RAS syndrome stands for redundant acronym syndrome.
Oh, yeah, that's the best.
Which refers
ATM machine.
Yeah, exactly. When people use redundant words when using acronyms, like ATM machine, which expands out to automated teller machine.
I like it.
LCD display,
yes.
Liquid crystal display. Or one that I come across in my work a lot, key KPIs, which are key performance indicators. And the reason, of course, that it's my favorite is because the term RAS syndrome is self-referential, which
yeah,
that's enough to get me. That's how you win me over.
I think the reason why I like that one a lot is because growing up and being a little shithead, being
no, you're a shithead now.
I'm less of a shithead, but just thinking in my head you shouldn't say ATM machine. Shut the fuck up, stupid little Kayla. Now I've gone on a journey from going to now I think it's cute and sweet and it makes fucking sense. And also it's that ship of Theseus thing. ATM at this point doesn't necessarily stand for ATM machine, automated teller machine. It stands... How
is that ship of Theseus?
Because it's I can't... It made sense in my head. I'm saying the word started as an acronym for automated teller machine,
and now it's just else.
It just means ATM. ATM is just the name of it. We're not thinking automated teller machine, so you say ATM machine. The ATM is the name of the thing, but you're saying it's the ATM machine.
Okay, but Kayla, what if we're I don't like saying ATM machine. Let's turn it into an acronym. Let's call it ATMM.
That's cute.
And then people start calling them ATMMs, and then they're
ATM machine.
We need to call it an ATMM machine. In 1,000 years, we're going to have ATMMMMMM machines.
That's fine.
It's terrible.
I don't think that would happen.
That's the future that you want.
No, I want the future where everyone stops having babies.
That's last episode. All right. Do you feel like you know everything you ever wanted to know about acronyms and then some?
No, I'm going to Wikipedia this later.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
There is more. Obviously, I'm not just reading Wikipedia verbatim. At least
I just want to go look up a bunch of things that I didn't know were acronyms.
Yeah. I had a section for that, but I cut it for time. There's things like, we said like base jumping.
Yeah.
Things like that. Anyway, good, because that means we've set the stage now to start the fighting. All right, so first things first, why don't we just settle this right here and ask the dictionary?
What dictionary?
Well, I did that, and sadly that's far from definitive. Both Webster's and OED, which that's Oxford English Dictionary, remember, list both pronunciations as being correct. And various other less well-known dictionaries are either split on the matter or also list both.
And I'll also say this about dictionaries.
They're a tool of oppression?
They are a tool of oppression.
Yeah, well, be that as it may, the dictionaries can't help us decide. So what hope do we have? Let's find out. As mentioned earlier in the show, the reason where we're at with the whole GIF versus GIF Armageddon is because it's a new part of the English lexicon, relatively speaking, and it happens to occupy this weird space where there isn't really like a solid rule to guide us. But there are a lot of words to guide us, and the pronunciation of all of these said words is extremely far from definitive. Oh, what's that? I hear all the GIFers saying there is a rule? Well, that brings me to argument number 1.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time because I'm just thinking about all of the ways in which GIFers are wrong.
We're going to come across as way too biased on this episode.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Just remember, there are dogmatic GIFers out there that have annoyed non-dogmatic GIFers the same way that we have.
What does CD-ROM stand for?
CD read-only memory.
What does CD stand
Compact
for?
disc.
Oh, so shouldn't it be KD-ROM? Sorry.
Anyway, so hardcore GIFers will say there is a rule. Argument number 1, the most ubiquitous argument you hear when you get into this debate, and that's the assertion by the GIFer side that it's obvious that it should be pronounced GIF because the word G stands for graphical, which is a hard G sound.
Right.
You don't say graphics interchange format, do you? Checkmate, GIFers. Conveniently, for the fact that I chose this as the first argument to present, it also happens to be the easiest to dismiss. To the point where when I was doing my research for this topic, it kind of made me wonder what sort of, motivated reasoning the GIF camp must be deploying to not be able to think of counterexamples to this supposed, quote, rule. Which, in case it wasn't clear, this isn't an actual pronunciation rule. There aren't any.
Right.
There's no pronunciation rule for acronyms. It doesn't exist. Anytime someone uses this argument in favor of GIF, they're making up said rule. And if you don't believe me, let's talk about some examples.
Yes, please.
Kayla, can you say these 2 acronym words for me right now?
Scuba and laser.
That's right. And I'd wager that pretty much everyone pronounces them that way. Even in the GIF camp or the GIF camp, I'm pretty sure everybody pronounces them as scuba and laser. However, if we were to follow the made-up pronounce it like the starting letters rule, then we'd have to pronounce self-contained underwater breathing apparatus as scuba. And we'd have to pronounce light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation as like Lassier, I think. Lassier. So it would be Lassier and scuba. Scuba.
Don't want to say that neither of those roll off the tongue.
Oh, and I have another one.
Please.
And this one hits pretty close to home because you might call it a cousin of the GIF or GIF. Pronounce this one for me, please.
JPEG.
JPEG. So again, for our listeners who are less tech savvy, the reason I said JPEG is a cousin of the GIF is that they are both image formats, extremely ubiquitous ones. Here is what JPEG stands for. Joint Photographics Experts Group.
Boom!
Which is the name of the group that created the format. So if we follow that this is just the pronunciation rule, then we all need to start pronouncing JPEG as JFEG.
I'm not doing that.
So, checkmate GIFers then, right?
I can't wait to pull out JPEG in the future.
Well, not so fast.
No, I want to be right.
Oh, what happened to either side is right. I don't even care.
I want to be okay.
Am I bringing out the tribalist like?
No, I do not care what you use. I do care when somebody starts coming at me.
Yeah, totally.
I don't give a fuck,
right.
but if somebody's coming at me, I want to clip you on your ass.
Yeah, and what people usually come at you with, at least in that direction from the GIFer camp, is saying you have to say GIF because GIF graphical.
But not and that like is that. Actually you're screaming it. And I've been screamed at.
And that is actually the weakest argument. I haven't been screamed at, but I have been talked down to.
I've been voice raised.
That's fucked up. All right, so like I said, not so fast on that checkmate. First of all this means is that GIFers can't demand the pronunciation be hard G based on some rule. It doesn't mean that it ought to be pronounced with a soft G. One of the analyses I read gets around this with the demand for consistency, i.e., if you say hard G GIF, then to be consistent, you must also say JPEG instead of JPEG. But all I think this proves is that there is no consistency, and I think there's a little dogmaticness there on behalf of that GIFer. So what's next then in the chain of arguments? Well, once you go a bit deeper down the rabbit hole,
I'm sorry, it's really stupid to say if you say GIF, you must say JPEG.
Well, to be consistent is what he said.
But even that, it's like, okay, but the P plays a different role in both of those things.
That's probably what a GIFer would say.
The P in photograph only is pronounced like that because it's PH.
Right.
So unless you're throwing that H in there in JPEG, I'm just saying.
Right, but then you could counter that and say, well, then why isn't it joint photographics instead of joint photographics, or at least joint photographics?
I just think if it looks like JPEG, say JPEG.
Right. Well, that's but that's why that rule doesn't hold water.
Yeah.
So what's up next? If you go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, you start running into, I would say, more intelligent and well-armed fighters in this battle. One such combatant maintains a webpage called howtoreallypronouncegif.com. Or sorry, howtoreallypronouncegif.com, because he is a dyed-in-the-wool GIFer, and he comes prepared. He even acknowledges up front that the whole you have to pronounce it like the abbreviated words argument is invalid for the reasons that I just talked about. Then he goes on to tell us that, quote, every word that starts with G, then a vowel, then an F, is pronounced with a hard G. For example, gaff, gift, guff, guffaw. And most one-syllable words that start with G have a hard G. Gab, gad, gag, gal, gam, gap, gas, and he lists like 30 more after that. And then he talks about the most powerful weapon in the GIFer's arsenal, at least from my perspective, and that is the lexical neighbor argument, although he doesn't use that term. The lexical neighbor argument is basically this. When confronted with a new word or acronym or something we're supposed to say out loud, human brains tend to mentally catalog the words that they already know how to pronounce and then pick something that they feel is closest.
Right.
And use that word as a guide. According to GIFers, the closest lexical neighbor to the acronym GIF is the word GIFT because it's only off by one letter T.
That makes sense.
So to them, it makes the most logical sense to pronounce GIF like gift minus the T, hence GIF.
That all makes sense, and that's great and fine.
QED, GIFers win then, right?
No, there's no win because we're making shit up here, first of all.
We'll get to that.
We're making shit up. Second...
Kayla, just a second ago, you were all like, I want to be right. So let's keep going down that path before we... Just hold on to that thought.
I'm just saying that if there are people that want to pronounce it GIF, that's fine. If there are people that want to pronounce it GIF, that's also fine. Because at the end of the day, we all fucking know what we're talking about. It does not cause confusion. So maybe everybody should be cool or shut the fuck up.
Well, we will get to that. So if we think that this lexical neighbor argument is really powerful and GIFers win, not so fast there, Skippy. Gift isn't the only lexical neighbor to GIF. And it's not even the closest. I think it's actually tied for closest.
Oh, geez.
Gift gets cherry-picked because of how close it is. But what about a nice gin and tonic? GIN is only one letter and one sound away from GIF. So perhaps GIFers are just alcoholics and GIFers are just used to giving gifts.
Maybe it's just if you like gin and tonics, you say GIF.
That's kind of what I'm suggesting. For the record, howtoreallypronouncegif.com guy dismisses gin because it comes from the Dutch word for juniper berries from which gin is produced.
You don't get to do that. Because all of those other words he said come from other languages too. Sorry.
Exactly. I have absolutely no idea why this makes it dismissible other than a hefty dose of motivated reasoning.
Yeah, it's a cult.
Anyway, outside of gin, GIF has plenty of lexical neighbors that sport both hard and soft Gs. So this lexical neighbor argument, while based on the logical premise that new words should be pronounced how people naturally assume they should based on analogy to old words, it doesn't hold water for GIFers because some of them cherry pick these old words in which to analogize. And I would say that would also not hold water for me if I said, well, it's like gin, because you could just say, well, it's like gift. Anyway, as well armed as this guy comes in arguing his pronunciation case, at the same time, this guy also provides a lot of ammunition to the cult argument. Uh-oh. Why? Well, I mean, okay, so first we just mentioned the motivated reasoning and dismissing counterexamples to the case, such as gin. But also I'd say look at the name of the website, how to really pronounce gif.com.
Ew.
In other words, I am right and outsiders are wrong.
Gross.
And it doesn't stop there. Listen to the language he used to present his case. Quote, the word gift is the closest word to gif, and it has a hard G. To pronounce gif, just say gift without the T. What does he mean by closest here?
That's so arbitrary.
It's no closer letter-wise than gin, which he dismisses. So what does he actually mean?
That means this is what I think.
Quote, why is it the correct pronunciation? It's the most natural, logical way to pronounce it. That's why, when everyone comes across the word for the first time, they use a hard G.
But then can he explain to me why I say Jeff?
Yeah, so everyone, like, did he take a survey? Because I'm pretty sure that there's at least 2 counterexamples who are talking right now. It's like a very presumptuous statement and a little bit judgy, like the most natural, logical way to pronounce it sounds like you're arguing starting from the premise that you're already right.
Yes. It's like when Michaela Peterson goes like, this is how people eat.
Right.
No, it's not.
This is healthy because it's healthy.
Yeah.
Right. Quote, are there any valid arguments for pronouncing it GIF? No. There are some websites out there, like this one, and then he links to it, that try to convince people to use a soft G, but they rely solely on the way Steve Wilhite says it. So Steve Wilhite is, you might have recalled, is the creator of the GIF, which we'll talk about in a second.
Okay.
But notice 2 things here. One is like this definitive no to his own straw man question if there are any valid arguments for soft G. And 2, the straw man that the only proper argument in favor of GIF is the creator argument, which isn't the only argument in favor of it. And finally...
But question.
Yes.
What is the tone of this website? Is he dead serious or is he being a little jokey?
I think the tone of this website strikes me as similar to the tone of the whole argument, which is like, it's really kind of hard to say.
It's like...
Like some people are like, this is funny. But it's also like some people like get really intense about it, so I can't really tell.
Yeah.
You know, like I personally think that it's fun and funny.
I don't think.
But I've also been yelled at by it, so I'm like, I don't know. Like,
it's
are
not
you
fun
serious? Yeah, it's like it's weird. So it's just, bottom line, I really am not sure. There's sometimes I can tell. I think when people are being funny. Anyway, finally, quote. Now you can go forth and freely pronounce GIF with a hard G as you naturally would, because you have every right to do so. If you feel compelled to honor the pronunciation given by the GIF's creator out of some sense of obligation, that's perfectly fine too. Just don't give those of us who pronounce it correctly a hard time. Smiley face.
I've never given a GIFer a hard time, personally.
So, naturally would is again very presumptuous, right? And those who pronounce it correctly is also pretty dogmatic.
Also, like, don't give us a hard time. Well, don't give other people a hard time. You're giving people a hard time.
Well, we might, like, again, we might be talking past each other here.
No, he is giving people a hard time by saying there's no valid argument. Like, well, then don't give me a hard time. I'll give you a hard time if you give me a hard time.
But it sounds like maybe he has been given hard times in the past if he's citing that. All right, by the way, if you yourself are a GIFer, this guy sells t-shirts on his website, so you should go check it out, howtoreallypronouncegif.com.
But do know that if you wear one of these t-shirts, you
kind
are
of makes
asking
you a D-bag.
for it.
Okay, so where are we now? We can't rely on the first letters of the word to guide us. There are multiple lexical neighbors to GIF that pull us in both directions. So, as I promised a second ago, let's talk a little bit about Steve Wilhite, the creator of the format, because that is a significant battlefield in this war. In the GIF/GIF debate, the following story was a proverbial shot heard round the world. Steve won a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Webbies, which is an internet software dev awards show thing, back in 2013. At this point, he was well aware of this ongoing debate surrounding the pronunciation of his creation, and he used his 5 words. So in the Webbies, you are only allowed exactly 5 words for your acceptance speech.
Oh, damn.
To say, quote, "It's pronounced GIF, not GIF," end quote. Boom. Case closed now, right?
But even that, like, okay, that's what I always go to in my head, is knowing this. And also, it's just like, it's not definitive just because he says so.
Well, it's funny you say that. A bunch of the articles I read that were pro-GIF were pro-GIF on the basis of this statement.
I mean, I understand that, and the creator deserves to have, like, a say in how their thing is pronounced. And also, who fucking cares? Just say what you want.
So anyway, this is when everyone packed up and went home, and the entire world started pronouncing it as GIF.
No, this is when people were, like, mean to him.
Yeah, just kidding. This did nothing more than stir the debate up even further. So GIFers have a bunch of weapons they deploy against the whole creators' rights argument. Here are a few. Quote, "Doesn't matter what the creators say. You can't make up the word banana and tell everyone it's pronounced ping pong table." Or this, quote.
Except, okay, sorry, go. I'm just going to say, why is Colonel spelled like that? And why is...
that's something that comes up.
That's basically ping pong table.
I know.
And why is lieutenant pronounced lieutenant in places? Fuck off.
That's just wrong. For all of our listeners in England, you pronounce it wrong.
I'm just saying.
That's weird.
Aluminium. That's not...
So, okay,
but the pronunciation's not wrong.
So first of all, we've chopped our audience in half because all of the GIFers are now tuned out. And now we're like jettisoning all of our UK listeners.
No, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that if a word looks like banana, it's pronounced ping pong table. Like, sometimes that happens in our stupid language.
Yes, that's true. Or how about this quote from John Simpson? Actually, this is a combined quote from John Simpson and from our friend up in the How to Really Pronounce GIF website. So John Simpson, who is the chief editor of the Oxford English Dictionary, disagrees with Mr. Wilhite. Quote, "However, the pronunciation with a hard G is now very widespread and readily understood. A coiner effectively loses control of a word once it's out there," end quote. And I'm sure you would agree, this is still the guy on the website talking, I'm sure you would agree, it's far more likely that these masters of the English language understand better than anyone how to pronounce a word. Wilhite also mentioned that he is annoyed there's still a debate over the pronunciation. To be frank, isn't it his own fault for choosing a pronunciation that simply doesn't make sense? End quote.
Everybody needs to shut up.
But then we wouldn't have a podcast, Kayla.
But just do.
So
do
the way
you not have more going on in your life to worry about?
So the way the creator says so argument gets shot down is basically by pointing out that creators don't always dictate how their creation gets used. Personally, I'm a little torn on this one. I really go back and forth, and this is the part that reminds me about the documentary we just watched.
Right.
Again, about that artist that created Pepe the Frog. So, like, that makes me go like, oh man, this guy really should have say over whether people say GIF or GIF.
Yeah, I get it.
But at the same time, you know, this is a widely used, shareable, like it's like public domain now.
Alexander Graham Bell wanted people to say ahoy when they answered the phone.
Right.
And we say
That's
hello.
terrible. Yeah.
So.
Right. So you don't always get to, you know, that just because he says it doesn't necessarily make it correct. Right. So that's kind of what that's what the counter argument to this is. And I think it holds some water. By the way, part of why Steve Wilhite claims that GIF is the correct pronunciation has to do with this anecdote. Apparently, back in the 80s and 90s at CompuServe, so if you recall, that's where he was and where it was developed, Steve and his colleagues would throw around the phrase, "Choosy developers choose GIF," as sort of a joke and a way to tout their creation.
That's so cute.
So for our younger audience, this is a reference to a popular TV ad from the time.
A sexist popular TV ad.
For Jif peanut butter that went, "Choosy moms choose Jif." So until the GIF format was popularized outside of CompuServe and got into the wild of the internet, there was a time when the only correct pronunciation was GIF in the entire world. This anecdote actually gets used by both sides in their arguments, by the way. Jiffers say that this precedence means that it's the correct way. Giffers say, well, the only reason anyone doesn't say GIF is because these dumb developers started it that way. Whenever anyone outside of that group sees it for the first time, they automatically think GIF.
False. I thought GIF. The first time I learned about GIFs, I said GIF in my head.
And again, it's a bit dogmatic to say everyone must have thought the same way I did when they first read the word. Which, to be fair, that gets a little bit dogmatic on both sides. You want another little window into the dogmatism going around with this thing?
Yes.
Look no further than the article titles of all the stuff I was talking about researching for this.
I don't want to. It's just so frustrating. I'm so frustrated.
All right, that's the end of the show.
No, it's just I know what they're all going to be, and I just want everyone to be happy.
Well, that's not happening, especially not with this topic. All right, so there's howtoreallypronounce.gif.com, which we've talked about. Then there's an article called How the Hell Do You Pronounce GIF Anyway? And that's from Gizmodo. They're on the GIF side, swayed by the creator said so argument. Then there's this article entitled, You Are 100% Wrong About the Pronunciation of GIF. That's a wonderful article title from Newsweek, who is in the GIF camp.
Why is Newsweek talking about this?
Then there's It's Settled. Creator Tells Us How to Pronounce GIF, an article from the cable news network, i.e. CNN, which you'll recall from earlier, agreeing with the creator puts them in the GIF camp. Then there's How to Pronounce GIF Once and For All from NewYorkDailyNews.com. I'm not really sure how to classify their decision on it. I guess I'll say neutral, but their analysis was basically that GIF was 100% technically correct, but language changes, and in this case it's changing towards GIF. More people pronounce it that way now, so eventually GIF will become obsolete.
Okay. I can buy that.
Note how both this article title and the CNN article title make the decision sound like really definitive and, quote, settled.
Yeah.
Right? Like the CNN article literally says, It's Settled, Creator Tells Us How. And this one is entitled, How to Pronounce GIF Once and For All. Anyway, there's an article from Medium called, or a blog post, I guess, technically, My Irrefutable 3-Point Platform and Final Word on GIF Pronunciation. This guy presents a strong case for the GIF camp, but again, notice the dogma in his article title as well. And yes, I know a lot of this dogma, as you were sort of talking about a minute ago, is tongue-in-cheek, but so is this whole episode, so STFU.
But it's also like not. It's also like in that...
It is and it isn't.
In that weird like space where people kind of hide behind saying like, it's a joke, but then they really yell at you.
Yeah, I know.
Like actually get mad.
Then there's this one. It's time to stop arguing about the pronunciation of GIF.
Did I write that one?
Nope, that was the Atlantic. Thanks for that neutral one, Atlantic. And while we're tallying things up, here's a few more that aren't necessarily articles. Former President Obama weighed in at one point on the side of hard G GIF.
Who cares?
USA Today admits that soft G GIF is correct, but that's in an article about a cross-promotion between the peanut butter company Jif that we just mentioned and a company named Giphy, who is in the business of maintaining a database of GIFs where they claim that GIF is always the peanut butter and GIF is always the looping image. So they did this whole cross-promotion thing. It was actually earlier this year in 2020. That. And you could buy like commemorative peanut butter that had like GIF instead of JIF.
But here's my question. Where the fuck does Giphy get to come into this with its GIPHY bullshit?
Well, that's my next thing. Is interestingly, Giphy decided to spell their company name with a PH, not an F, as in the original GIF. So I'm not sure how much weight their lexical arguments hold.
None.
It's like, yeah, it's Giphy with a hard G. Okay, but then why'd you spell it PH?
What the hell does that mean?
I think
format with a PH? Fuck you.
It clearly... No, but that's the thing. To me, that is like this really clear microcosm of the whole, like, once you transform something, you might want to be pronouncing it differently or spelling it differently. One or the other, right? Because it would look weird to see, like, GIFY. I'd want to pronounce that like Giphy or Giphy or something. So if you want to pronounce it Giphy, I don't know, the PH makes more sense, but then they're changing the letter
if you
from the original.
Type in GIFY, do you want to know the first thing that comes up?
What?
Giphy. GIPHY.
One of the things that I don't really mention here, an argument in favor that the Giffers use in favor is that if you input the word GIF into text-to-speech programs, it pronounces it GIF because of the lexical closeness thing.
That's such a definitive resource on how things are pronounced. Yeah, When, like, the thing that you, like, type in words to get funny pronunciations, that's real definitive.
So for those keeping score at home, that was 4 articles in the GIF camp, 4 articles plus former presidents and marketing promos in the GIF camp, and 2 undecided voters. So...
don't be undecided.
We can't even use which pronunciation has the most number of publications on their side rubric to help us decide. So I guess we're left with the notion that there isn't actually a winner in this debate, only losers. There's a bunch of anecdotes of people claiming that they're correct for various reasons that are not supported, and there's a bunch of motivated reasoning going on, and there really isn't any hard data to help us decide. So the answer is ambiguous. Or is it?
Yeah, I knew that was happening.
What if there were a PhD linguist that tackled this exact problem and had data to back it up? Enter onto the battlefield the Napoleon of the GIF war, a PhD linguist at the University of Montreal. Here's how he enters into the battlefield with his blog post. Bear with me, it is a bit long, but it cuts like a hot knife through butter. Quote, let's say you're an English speaker, reading a text, and you run into a new word. Should you ever have to pronounce that word out loud, short of looking it up in a dictionary, you'll draw on your knowledge of English, especially the correspondence between certain combinations of letters and the sounds they make. So far, so good, but sometimes there's conflicting evidence in the lexicon. And while we like to think we all speak the same English, in reality, your own personal English is ever so different from somebody else's because your experiences with language are unique. Fortunately, this doesn't keep us from understanding one another. For example, when I moved to Canada and heard the first syllable of pasta being pronounced pass and not with the vowel of pa like I was used to, it was certainly new and notable for me, but it didn't lead to any confusion. That difference you can easily pin down to regionality. You hear a certain pronunciation, and you can guess a thing or two about the person. The GIF debate, or GIF debate, strikes me as similar, but with a crucial distinction. I can't think of any easy group signaling, intentional or otherwise, that either pronunciation brings with it beyond simply the pronunciation itself. Saying it GIF signals that you're a GIFer, pure and simple. You can't tell where somebody's from, what socioeconomic class they might fit into, their sex or gender, etc., just from that initial consonant. If we could, I doubt we'd be talking about which form is right or wrong. Instead, we'd probably, imperfect beings that we are, fall into some pretty harmful traps if that distinction fell along some power differential. Just look at vocal fry. Men use it more than women, but because it's associated with women's speech, it can be seen as undesirable, unprofessional, and so on.
Yeah, Ira Glass.
So the vocal fry, for those of you that aren't sure, is the whole, it's like the Valley Girl sort of speak.
It's when you talk like this.
Yeah, it's like when you say, oh my
honestly,
God.
No, you don't have to say it. You can, everybody just does it. Because Ira Glass does it, and everybody loves listening to Ira Glass, but the second a Kardashian does it, it makes you dumb.
Anyway, he continues, with this post, I want to probe one aspect of why that initial subconscious decision is made. When you first saw GIF, why you heard it in your head as GIF or GIF. And to do that, we need to look at patterns and regularities in the English lexicon. I'm going to disappoint you right away. Both forms can be justified, and because English speakers understand both of them implicitly, both forms are right.
There you go.
The debate may be fun, but I think we all know deep down that nothing will ever definitively prove one over the other. End quote.
Boom! That is the argument that I think is correct. There is no correct way to say it. Get me a can of soda. Get me a can of pop.
Then he dives into the sweet, sweet data. So remember when we were talking about some of the arguments made by GIFers and GIFers, like about which words are lexical neighbors and which aren't, and it's just like gift, and I'm cherry picking gin, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Well, basically what this PhD linguist does at this point is that, except instead of just cherry picking, he analyzes a huge set of data of English words. It's called the English Lexicon Project, and it's just like this huge database of words and words usage. So he takes a look at that and looks at two things. First he cleans up the data. So for example, removing like present participle words ending in GE, such as arranging or hinging or caging. because he felt like that would be like a little unfair.
Sure.
Then he looks at the two things. So first, how often the hard G and the soft G appear in terms of number of words in the language. So like how many words have those two sounds. And secondly, how often those words are actually used in communication. So for example, the word gift is used much more than the word incorrigible. So gift would, even though like if those were the only two words in the language, then they'd score equal on number of words, but gift would score much higher on usage. If that makes sense. Speaking of usage, do you know what the most used soft G word is?
The most used soft G word, and it's not GIF.
I don't know if he counted that one for this, so other than that.
I want to think about this for a second.
That's also probably not that.
Sorry. And it's not gin?
No. It doesn't have to be at the beginning of the word.
I don't know then.
Magic.
Magic.
So I don't know. I'd say maybe my exposure to Magic the Gathering was what makes me a Giffer.
Magif.
But it also has the hard G in gathering, so maybe that's not a good
Magif the Gathering.
No, it would be Magic the Gathering.
Oh, it doesn't roll off the tongue.
No, not really. So he looks at both of these factors, the number of words and the usage, crunches the number using a process called log transformed frequency, and finds, essentially, that it's more or less tied.
Beautiful.
But it's tied in such a way that maybe explains the existence of the debate. You see, while it is tied overall, the hard G sound is more prevalent when a word starts with the letter G, but it's fully flipped around when the letter G occurs in the middle of the word. So when all of the Giffers and the Giffers are saying like, oh, it's naturally this way. If you read it, you'd naturally read it this way. They're all wrong because it's split down the middle. If 90% of the usage was, 90% of the usage of like GE or GA or whatever in the English language was soft, then the Giffers would be right. Because it's like, yeah, that's how you would naturally, like all of the other words in the English language are like that.
Right.
If it was the other way, the Giffers would be right. But this guy who crunched the numbers said that it's split down the middle.
Jit fucked.
Good one. But yeah, so it's flipped whether the G occurs in the middle of the word or the beginning of the word. The beginning of the word is more hard G and the middle of the word is more soft G. So I will let Dr. Dow take it from here again. Quote, let's step back a moment and ask, what's, quote, right and wrong when it comes to stakes like these, the pronunciation of a word? Is it what an authority said, for those of you who invoke Steve Wilhite? Tempting as that might be, I advance, and I think most, if not all linguists would agree with me, that right is simply an intelligible form implicitly understood by a speech community. That is, it's right because they agree it's right. There may be a right within our community versus right in some other community that I can gauge, like dialectical differences. But there's also wrong in the sense of, I don't know anyone who says it that way. Dare I say, for instance, that we native English speakers are all in agreement that the letter I in GIF doesn't make the vowel sound E as in beach, right? It doesn't make that long I sound.
Geef.
The evidence is just that strong and consistent in English that the letter I makes the sound I when it's in a syllable that ends with a consonant, or at least a consonant like F. Change the spelling to geef, and our intuitions change. Bottom line is, hard as it is to accept, language actually is a democracy. That's Linguistics 101 when we talk about the arbitrariness of capital L language. And between the Giffers and the Giffers, really all we differ in is what generalizations we made from our own vocabularies in order to decide how the word, quote, sounds to us. Some of us pay attention to word position. Others tend to use the lexicon as a whole. The rest is just after the fact attempts to justify ourselves and have some fun along the way. End quote.
So we have to, next month, vote out all the Giffers, is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Right. We have to make sure that none of the Giffers are able to vote at the polls. So what do you think about this final analysis?
Pretty good.
Good analysis, Kayla.
No, I think the thing about language being a democracy makes sense. I also think that we should, all of us, look a little bit at our dogmatic nature that we harbor about the way language is utilized as a whole, because people pronouncing things differently or using language wrong can get... I think that's why the GIF thing does get so, like, heated is because...
Oh, my God.
No, it's because language actually is something that there is a lot of dogma about and has been used.
Like you saying literally when you mean figuratively.
I just mean more like if somebody misspells something, it's really easy to go like, they're an idiot. Or if somebody uses AAVE as opposed to standard English, it's like, oh, that's incorrect, when that's not incorrect. It's just different.
If you use the wrong usage of your...
I don't care anymore.
I lose all respect. I'm sorry.
How do I know?
Kayla, I'm a gatekeeper. I got to keep keeping my gates.
Why? Why?
I don't know. It's because it's funny on the podcast.
No, it's stupid. Just let people say what they want.
Well, you're stupid. Y-O-U-R.
Especially if it does not... If there is not an issue with your ability to understand what the person is saying, maybe chill out a little bit.
Yeah, but doesn't it also, like, it's a bit of, I don't know, I don't want to say virtue signaling. It's like class or education signaling, right? I mean, like, I always want to try to make sure that I'm spelling things correctly because I worry about how I'm perceived.
That's fine, but that's you worrying about yourself.
But then you're saying on the other side of things, I should be more forgiving.
Yeah. Because especially when we're talking so often to each other, like on the internet now, and like talking only through text, if somebody's misusing your, you don't know if this is the third language they speak.
Right.
And if you
They
are
might
speaking
speak Pig Latin, Klingon.
If you're speaking your third language and you mix up the yours, that's not an indicator of your intelligence.
That's a good point. I can still barely conjugate Spanish, so.
Oh my God.
Plus, they have Vosotros, which is really a godsend.
I don't even know what it means.
We need Vosotros.
We never got to learn it when I was in school.
Y'all.
It was always grayed out on all the workbooks. They wouldn't teach it to us. Teach the controversy of Vosotros.
Teach it to us, Vosotroses.
Please.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to say about this guy's analysis is that it really puts the whole dogma of the only logical way is my way thinking into sharp relief. It essentially proves it wrong and demonstrates how silly that thinking is.
Thank you, sir. What's his name?
His name is Michael Dow.
Thank you, Michael Dow.
PhD. All right, Kayla, it's about that time. Criteria time. Since today's topic is a little bit of a round peg in the cult square hole, maybe.
Yeah, this was a stretch.
You're a stretch. Whatever, Cicada 3301, or should I say Cicada?
Cicada.
Let's agree on what we're talking about, lest we create another arbitrary semantic debate. I think we should just go over each of the criteria for each of the two camps, or maybe just in general, decide if either or both of them is a cult.
Okay, so it's two cults.
Yeah, 2 for the price of 1 in this episode.
You did not read to me any websites of how to really pronounce GIF.com, so I'm already feeling better about my side of things.
But I read to you my irrefutable 3-point platform and final word on GIF
Yeah, but that's
pronunciation.
an article, not a whole website.
Well, it's the same thing. It's just a dude writing.
Fucking dudes writing. Stop writing, dudes.
Yeah, get out of here, dudes. By the way, this is not a gendered debate. There are folks on both sides of the gender divide that have argued both ways.
I've gotten yelled at by women about this. Expected harm towards the individual.
Super high.
Very high.
Very high.
For both sides.
Yeah, because people yell at me and they hurt my feelings.
Yeah. Psychological harm. Social. Literally, I have to I'm not kidding. I'm shocked that I said GIF on the podcast.
I know.
Because I am very careful about what word I use.
I do.
Honestly,
I do the same thing.
I don't want to get into it. I just don't want to get into it.
I do the same thing. I typically say GIF in mixed company now, which it's actually funny now that we're saying that because I've never had somebody be like, really? GIF?
Yeah, I know.
And I use GIF all the time now, so...
Yeah, I know. I just think that, I don't necessarily know if that has anything to do with society. I think it might just happen to be that we surround ourselves with more GIFers than GIFers.
Right.
So for both GIFers and GIFers, your harm is
expected harm is just super high, as high as it's ever been.
Is it niche? I would say it is not, considering all of the articles. If fucking Newsweek is talking about it, if
Newsweek,
the president
CNN,
is talking about
the president, Medium.
No, not niche.
Read about this on Reddit. It's all over. It's everything.
Anti-factuality.
So it's low on the niche things. Okay. Anti-factuality.
Pretty.
We talked about motivated reasoning.
Both, yeah.
Other than that, though, I don't know. It's weird.
Well, it's a lot of here's why it is the way it is. And it's like, well, but that's not actually a fact.
Right.
All of the this is why I'm right. It's like, that's not a fact.
Yeah. Let's get back to that one.
Why?
Because I want to get back to it later.
Just say it now.
No, I'm going to wait.
Percentage of life consumed. Well, we're talking an awful lot about it right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some people, it seems to be their whole life. Like, that guy has his whole website with T-shirts. I'm assuming he thinks about it morning, noon, and night, and when he's asleep.
I think in general, though, it's low.
Oh, okay. We're going to do that one for real, not fake.
So.
Okay.
It's hard to...
Because we said expected harm was high, so...
I think it is.
Oh, you think it's actually high? Okay.
I think that... I don't think that it's great for people who are friends or strangers to be yelling at each other about a word.
They're kidding.
Not really. Well, I'm sorry. Then I think of kidding differently. I don't want to be shouted at while you're making a joke. That hurts me. You're
a very nice person.
I'm sensitive.
Yeah.
Please don't shout. I don't like it.
All right, ritual super high here, I gotta say.
Is it?
I don't know.
You just pulled a me.
No, I mean, like, the fact that we're talking about words and language and sort of inherently ritualistic, maybe.
I don't
know.
I think you're wrong.
What about the ritual of yelling at someone when they say the way you don't agree with?
I don't know if that's ritualistic. I think it's just reaction.
So low?
I think it's low on ritual. There's no one's being like...
No one's holding a Catholic mass in honor of GIF or GIF?
GIF, yeah.
Well, maybe not today.
I don't think...
Maybe in the future.
Okay. GIF, charismatic leader, is the creator.
Yeah, I think for GIF, it's definitely Steve Wilhite. GIF, I don't know that it has one.
GIF is how to really pronounce GIF.com.
That guy? Yes. He has a name, by the way. I don't know if I want to use it on the podcast, but it's... I guess he's, but I don't know if he's like recognized in any way.
Well,
other than,
we recognized him on our show.
Although he is referenced on other articles about
Well, there you go.
His website is referenced.
There you go.
Okay.
So I think...
So they both have charismatic leaders.
That they both have charismatic leaders. So
okay.
I think...
So it's a bit of a mixed bag. So I mentioned back way up at the top of the show, before we judge, I mentioned maybe adding a new criterion to the list. Yeah. And the reason for that is because I feel like one of the major reasons this is actually a viable topic for the show is less about any of our existing criteria and more about, because like we saw that like a lot of these scored pretty low.
Right. Well, some of them.
But it's more about like this idea of dogmatism that I've been talking about all episode. So I don't know, like...
You think that that's different than anti-factuality?
I'm not, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. Like, anti-factuality has motivated reasoning and closed logical loops and just, raw, like, bullshit, like not being true, pseudoscience, that sort of thing.
Dogmatism is just it's like another subsection, like how closed logical system, motivated reasoning.
It does feel like it includes some of that, yeah. I'm not sure if it's its own thing. For example, how to really pronounce gift.com, he presents some arguments that aren't anti-factual.
Right.
But he has this sense that only I can be right. Right. That's the thing on both of these sides, that if you look at it in a technical sense, they can both be right. The problem is they both are saying the other guy can't be right.
Like if you're dogmatic about something that is actually true, is that still
dogmatic?
Cult-like behavior? Is that still dogmatic?
Yeah, it's the insider-outsider, I'm right, they're wrong, even though both sides in this case are demonstrably right.
But... is dogmatism always anti-factual? Like, even if you're like dogmatic about the thing that is true, is not the way you then interact with that true thing.
So you're being anti-factual. So you're being factual when you say, here are all the reasons it should be pronounced GIF, but you're being anti-factual when you're saying, and those are the only valid ones.
Maybe. I don't
know. So it's anti-factual either way. I don't know. Might have to have some discuss.
I
tell you what, listeners, what do you think? Is dogmatism something we should add to our list? Send us your tweets and things, and send us some animated GIFs.
Send us some dogs.
Yeah, send us some dogs for the dogma. Because if we had dogma, then the best friends would have been super high.
They had a lot of dogma there.
Yeah.
Dogma
very high on dogma.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's keep talking about that.
Okay. Gather feedback from our audience.
And then I don't think we're dealing with cults here. As much as it pains me to say.
Wow, really? Even Giffers. Even dirty,
Giffers.
Dirty Giffers.
Horrible Giffers.
I'm actually kidding. We love all of you. And as we said in the show, provably it is okay to go either way. It just depends on whether you have more exposure to some words in which it's pronounced soft G and some words where it's pronounced hard G.
There you go.
All right. Anything else you want to add to the show?
Don't come at me, bro.
Fuck around and find out.
No, I don't want to have an argument. Whatever the way you say it is 100% fine. Just please let it be 100% fine for whatever way I want to say it.
So should we have opened this episode by talking about glory holes or glory holes?
Pronounce it however you want. If it doesn't affect...
Ping pong table.
If it doesn't affect your ability to understand...
That is exactly what the linguist PhD said.
Then it doesn't... Then it's not a problem.
That's exactly what he said.
So, come on. Come on, people now. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now.
God.
And say GIF or GIF or whatever the fuck you want.
All right. I'm Chris.
And I'm Kayla.
And this has been...
Cult.
Or just...
GIF.
Oh, actually, sorry. One more thing.
Cult or Gust Weird.
I left out the very last bit of the blog post from Mr. Dow.
Oh, man.
He's got a sense of humor because after his big, long, data-driven explanation of why either pronunciation is acceptable, he signs off the post by saying, quote, P.S. All that said, it should be pronounced...